Okay, we are live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wood and Ball Show for a Sunday, September 28th, 2014. I am Blake Wood, and I am joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Mr. Dave Ball.
Hello.
And gosh, it's been 2 weeks or so. How long have I been away?
It's been a couple.
Two
It's been a
weeks?
week or two. Yeah, a week or
Yeah.
two.
It feels good to be back. Back and talking on the mic here. Um, I must also mention I'm doing this podcast live, of course live, heading down south to Arlington and watch some National Football L. But that's enough about me. We'd like to welcome our guests for this week. Joining us is Ben, as well
Hi,
as
everyone.
the lovely Amanda.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. Viewing Ben and Amanda's respective teams, the Chicago Blackhawks and the Montreal starting team overviews of the Chicago Blackhawks. Are you ready, Ben?
Yeah, sure. What do you want me to overview about them?
Alrighty. First, we'll begin. Just kind of introduce us to the previous season that was. Just give us a brief overview of the just the regular season and just how the regular season went.
Well, it was a pretty successful season, but I guess we were. That was kind of our expectation going in, that it would, after having won the Cup the year before, that we were going to at least be a contending team going in, and we were. We got offense from the guys we expected to get offense from. We got defense from the people we expected to get defense from. Crawford kind of regressed towards the mean a little bit, but that was kind of an expectation, I feel like, and I think most people would agree with me there. It was a very tough conference we were fighting for, but and we got pretty far through the playoffs too, losing in Game 7 to the eventual Stanley Cup winners. So, and I still am of the opinion, no offense to the Rangers, but that the Western Conference Finals were the Stanley Cup Finals, and that the best team won, the Kings, but the second best team was the team they knocked out. So, I guess, yeah, that's kind of where we're at from last year. And, yeah.
Okay. That segues into just a playoff overview. Just give us kind of a condensed one. You guys make it to the Western Conference Final. You defeat the St. Louis Blues, you defeat the Minnesota Wild, and you take the eventual Stanley Cup champion Los Angeles Kings to a full 7 games there. Just kind of give us a brief breakdown of each of the playoff series.
Well, the Blues playoff series was scrappy, to say the least, with the hit involving Backus and a bunch of other questionable plays on both ends. Almost every game it was one team was clearly the better team over the other. Then moving on to Minnesota, it was very apparent watching that series that we were the more skilled team, that we were the we had the personnel to take this series, no problem. But the fact that Minnesota kept giving us a run for our money made it seem like we didn't have a combination of, in my opinion, the coaching and the I don't know if I want to say the drive, but just the chemistry wasn't there. And again, that may have been a result of the coaching, a lot of line juggling that you didn't see during the regular season. A lot of the people weren't producing that were kind of supposed to be producing. Sharp was moved off the first line. At times, Hossa was moved off the first line. And there just wasn't the same offensive firepower that they had during the regular season. And especially on the power play defense, too, when the Blackhawks were shorthanded a lot of the time, there would be the Blackhawks would do what was technically the best thing to do in that situation every time, but that also made them so predictable that it was kind of exploited by the Wild. And the same thing applies to the Kings series. Pretty much all the points I made outside of the Blackhawks were clearly the more talented team also applies to the Kings series. The Kings were very close with the Blackhawks on talent level. But pretty much everything else I said, the chemistry wasn't there, the line juggling, maybe it worked in some situations, but overall I think it kind of was a net negative for the team. And they were somewhat predictable with where they were playing, especially on a few 5-on-3s. There was a 5-on-3, I think, in Game 7 of the Kings series, where it was just, it was just like, this is like, if you were to read a book about power play offenses, it would say this is exactly how you do a 5-on-3. The Blackhawks did exactly what they were supposed to do, but in today's NHL, you can't just always do exactly what you're supposed to do. And I'd relate it to, other sports. If in football it's 2nd and goal on the 1-yard line and you have not a single wide receiver out and everyone just bunched up at the line of scrimmage, and then you do a run straight up the middle, I mean, the defense is going to see that coming and anticipate that. And in baseball, you have let's say you have a relief pitcher that only throws a fastball and a slider. You have a power hitter at bat, righty-righty matchup. He's going to see a slider first pitch trying to get the batter to chase low and away, and the batter's going to lay off it if you're being predictable all the time. So, yeah, the Blackhawks may have been correct in a lot of the things they were doing, but that doesn't mean that they should be doing everything so by the book all the time.
Okay, now we'll move on to the next portion of the season interview, that is the positional breakdown. We'll look at the Blackhawks forwards, defense, goaltending, and coaching. They'll just kind of give us an overview, unit by unit, and give us an overall grade of how you felt they performed the previous season. And we'll start with the forward depth. When you think the Chicago Blackhawks, you think of Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, Marian Hossa. But from what I gather, there was a whole other cast of forwards behind the scenes, if you will, really helping that success. Just kind of give us a overview of the forwards there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's when you think of the Blackhawks forward power, it's that's kind of where so much of their strength is centered, because they have that first line of Toews, Hossa, and Sharp, which is absolutely phenomenal. They were two of the top votes in Selke. Two of the top vote getters in the Selke race were on that Chicago first line, and their defense is secondary to their offensive ability. So it's an extremely scary line on both ends of the ice. Then the second line with Kane and Saad had a pretty good chemistry together. Both of them are great passers and scorers. Saad's also has shown increased development on the defensive end, which is a very good thing to see. So that second line had a lot of pluses too, and Kane started to backtrack. He's not getting any Selke votes anytime soon, but just the fact that he's starting to play defense and not completely going, well, I guess early Brett Hull's a little bit of an overstatement, but kind of that, offense-minded first mentality, just using your speed in the zone-to-zone transition, offensive transitions pretty much, and never on the backtrack. So that was good to see, and with Richards coming in, I think it'll improve dramatically. The Chris Versteeg for Peary trade, I know a lot of Blackhawks fans were against it from the beginning. I thought it could work just because Versteeg, coming back to Chicago where he had success previously, and Peary, who I will liken to early Brett Hull, with just absolutely does not play defense and never really fit with the lines that well, in my opinion. I thought that it wasn't going to be too bad of a trade, especially because Florida's eating part of Chris Versteeg's salary, and I thought that he's definitely worth the cap hit. But it turns out that I was completely wrong. And Versteeg was kind of a disaster. The healthy scratches a lot of games. But I still have hopes that he will improve, but people were saying the same thing about Danny Heatley, and Chris Versteeg was never a 50-goal scorer, so I'm not even cautiously optimistic. I guess I'm just I don't know what I'd call it, cynically hopeful. Teravainen, he's an interesting piece too. His development's going to be fun to watch. People compare him to kind of a mini Patrick Kane, a good scorer, good setup man, kind of small stature, but uses speed and his kind of on-ice awareness to his advantage. And I think that he has a lot of potential, but there still needs to be a lot of development. He's physically filled out a little bit more, which was the major knock against him last season. And the other good part about him is that if he needs to go down to the AHL, he's the only forward who doesn't need to be placed on waivers to be sent to the AHL.
Okay. And just kind of give us a grade of how you felt the Blackhawks offense performed in the previous season.
Mostly because of the depth we had with guys like Smith and Kruger, who, were phenomenal on both the offensive, in the offensive zone and defensive zone, could kill penalties, and you wouldn't mind putting them on the power play either, even though they each had very little time there. And just because that depth was there, I would give them an A, but a low A, but not quite an A minus. And the main reason I'm preventing going down to the main thing that's not giving them a full A is just the issues in the playoffs where the second the lines were changed, it was as if the offense just kind of was lost in ways. And the other thing was just that whenever Versteeg was on the ice, and most of the times that Regan was on the ice, it just seemed like they were, one more player because they couldn't, like they were the 12th forward. So, I'll give them a low A there.
Okay. Now,
Sorry, I think you cut out.
I got. You just covered the forwards, right?
especially from yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. That player would be Nicholas Hjalmarsson. I was quite impressed with how many times he stood in front of pucks. That guy was just absolutely.
I believe you just started covering the forwards, correct? That's where you just went over. Ben?
Yeah, so I think I'll just
Just head up, start talking about your defensemen, and kind of do about the same thing where you talk
okay,
about them
yeah,
and give them a grade also.
yeah, because Blake's kind of cutting out a little bit.
Yeah. So
So Keith and Seabrook both started the season a little bit slowly. I was kind of worried after that first month. There was a lot of bad giveaways in the
Mhm.
defensive zone. But they got back to improving. There was a little bit of slip at the end of the year there too. Roosevelt has
I have to
received
get
a
out of the way.
lot of flack among the Chicago fans and in the media, and I don't think it's completely deserved. Yeah, he might not be the best defenseman, but considering he's on the third pairing, and I think that Roosevelt gets a tiny bit too much shit.
Mhm.
With a Corsi relative of 3.4. The competition he's facing isn't as good, but he's a third pairing guy. I just don't think that. I think that just he might not be the flashiest defenseman, but he makes a lot, and he might make mistakes, but he also makes a lot of good plays. He's in the right places at the right time a lot. Just to make the. It's easy to see when a guy messes up, but it's harder to see those plays that he makes that are just they look standard, but they're not as standard as you might think. I'd compare it to like a Jim Edmonds or a Mickey Mantle who would read a ball off the baseball bat immediately and start running to the exact position the ball would fall, while another outfielder might make this spectacular diving catch at the same ball. Mickey Mantle and Jim Edmonds will just stand right under it and let it fall to them because, they read the ball better. Now, which play is going to make ESPN's top 10 list? The diving catch. And I kind of view that as with Roosevelt too. Just, a guy's in the corner, and you're in an exact position where you can prevent an outlet pass to a place where some sort of offense could be generated. It's just those little things that. And again, I'm not saying he's a great defenseman. I'm just saying that Chicago fans and Chicago media give him way too much flack. So, I don't know. That's my opinion there. Hammer, yeah, I'll completely agree with what Blake was saying. He's absolutely spectacular. He'd be on the first line in most places. The fact that he signed for $4.1 million, I think, is a steal. I think I said first line. I meant first pairing. And he's just blocking shots, generating takeaways, disrupting fast breaks. Just another player with just really, really good on ice awareness. Unfortunately, probably one of our defensemen will get traded. Someone like Oduya or Leddy. Leddy's still is. We still have contract control over Leddy, so he's a little bit a slightly more attractive option. And especially since he's probably at about the same level as Oduya, if not a little bit higher. And I know that the Blackhawks have said because the Blackhawks have to get another $2.25 million off their payroll to get under the cap. The Blackhawks have said if you want Leddy, you have to take Versteeg too, pretty much. So Leddy's probably not going to be getting moved, and I see Oduya as the more likely option. Now, obviously, no front office is going to say if you want Leddy, you have to take Versteeg. I mean, if Pittsburgh said, "Oh, we'll give us Leddy and we'll give you Crosby and eat his entire contract, obviously they'll take the trade, but it seems pretty clear that the Blackhawks are pretty committed to Nick Leddy.
Alrighty. Okay, and just give us a grade of the Blackhawks defense.
Yeah, again, last year I'd probably say the defense itself I'd give an A minus if you also include the forwards defensive abilities. I'd give it a full A, because maybe even an A plus, because the Blackhawks forwards were exceptional defensively, not just from the guys you expect it from, like Host and Taves, but guys like Sharp and Saad and Smith and Kruger and Shaw. There were a lot of guys that were stepping up defensively for the Blackhawks from the forwards that were stepping up defensively. So the entire defense of the Blackhawks, I'll give an A. The defensemen, I'll give an A minus.
Okay. Okay, and next is between the Pipes and Blackhawks goaltending. The number one goalie there in Chicago, Corey Crawford, he gets injured there sometime in the early part of the season, and he doesn't really show up, if you will, till the playoffs. Right off the bat, right there in the first round. But there was also a debut of a rookie goaltender, I believe, one Antti Ranta, who turned some heads there in Chicago. Just kind of talk more about Crawford and Ranta, and just give us a grade on him.
Okay. The goaltending for Chicago, I'll probably start with the grade, and I'll give it a B. Now, part of me says that's too high, but I guess my defense of it will be that Crawford's playoff performance was very good again. So, and Ranta, I think, is more than just a solid backup. Ranta, the original plan for Ranta was for him to play as the starter in the AHL just to get him some more reps last season, then bring him up this year. And unfortunately, he was kind of thrown into the fire pretty early with Habibulin clearly playing one too many years and probably should have retired early. No, not probably, should have retired early. And Ranta was kind of forced to be called up. And both not get in as many reps in the NHL, but also, is going to come under quite a bit more criticism just because, he's the backup, as when he wasn't supposed to be the backup for another season. But he impressed a lot of people, myself included. And he was a pretty good fill-in for Crawford when Crawford went down. And I just want to add that he's extremely nice in real life. He's like the nicest person in the world. And Crawford, I didn't like his contract at first, and I still am not a huge fan of it. But I think that he's really shown at last year that despite not being an elite NHL goalie, he's definitely a starter. And even though the previous season when they won the Cup, he was playing better than what he was. He also, and even though he did regress a little bit, he did show that he's competent enough to be a number one goalie on a competitive team, and that the Blackhawks aren't in a situation where they're trying to find a starting goaltender, which are very, very rare in the NHL and very, very hard to just get in a draft. So I think that even though Crawford's numbers may have gone down a little bit from the season before, if anything, it made me more confident in him just because they didn't regress as far as I was expecting them to. So I guess those are my thoughts there.
Okay. And lastly, to end our unit breakdown, as well as the season, head coach Joe Quinville. Yeah.
Sorry, what was that?
Going to be covering the coach.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so he was extended, not this current offseason, but the offseason before. I don't agree with his methods a lot of the time. Again, I've mentioned before that he's a little bit too predictable for me. Not saying that I, could do a better job, because I can't, and that's why I'm not an NHL coach. But just the fact that I can see the flaws in his system means that he probably needs to at least address them. So, and again, I'm not saying that I know the exact ways to do it, but when you're an NHL coach of his reputation, with the phenomenal talent that he has on the team, I am expecting more next season from him.
Okay, I know you're short on time here.
Oh, I can go another
about
20 minutes or so.
Okay, well, we'll kind of make the off-season, we'll kind of make the off-season portion a little more condensed. During the free agency, Chicago really only made one big acquisition, and that was getting Brad Richards from the New York Rangers. So just kind of talk about your thoughts on that.
So I think you cut out.
He was asking about Brad Richards. Kind of give your thoughts about him coming to your team. Can you hear us? Oh, Ben just left. Okay.
Okay. I was kind of worried that one was on me there. Oh,
yeah, I heard.
There he is. Okay.
Okay, Ben, can you hear us now? Okay, technical difficulties are currently happening on our hockey cast. We'll try to get Ben to...
Hello?
Okay, can you hear us, Ben?
Yeah, I'm back.
You're back, okay, good.
Yeah,
Okay.
last thing I caught before my sound cut out was the Brad Richards being the major transaction.
Yeah, just kind of go over your thoughts on that.
I thought it was a great pickup of the Hawks, and yeah, it's only 1 year, and yeah, he's not quite the player that he may have been earlier on in his career, because he's not old, but he's, I think, 33, 34. And from what I've seen in the preseason, he's looked extremely good, and he took a pay cut, if you want to call it that, considering it was a buyout. So I don't know if it was really a pay cut, but the fact that he was making over $12 million before they bought him out, or he was making $12 million before they bought him out, I believe, really shows that he. He's down to $2 million now, so it's very cap friendly. And based on what he's done in the preseason, he's making a great second line center. So I'm very, very confident that he's going to be a big contributor this season, and I think it was a very big upgrade.
Alrighty, and we'll just now we'll just jump right ahead into the upcoming season, the fast approaching season. The Central Division during the off season, it gets a whole lot tougher. St. Louis gets Stastny. Dallas gets Spezza and Hemsky. Minnesota picks up Vanek. And even Nashville picking up James Neal, sure to cause problems there. But, a lot of people would also say that Chicago's right there with them, just simply by picking up Brad Richards. I guess, as well as managing to keep Taves and Kane for several more years. But with all that in mind, how do you see Chicago faring in the Central Division?
Well, this coming season, at least, I'm extremely confident. I'm not too worried about most of the other teams in the division. I don't think Varlamov is going to reproduce what he did with Colorado last season, and a lot of the stats around Colorado suggests they've been overperforming to an extent. St. Louis is the only team I'm really too afraid of. Dallas has improved, and I expect them to make the playoffs, but I don't expect them to be challenging Chicago or St. Louis for the division. Winnipeg, I don't expect to be a challenge in Nashville just because of one good forward they had. They still have almost zero offense because their best offensive player last season was Shea Weber. He had the most assists on the team, the most points, and the third most goals. And part of that is because Shea Weber's amazing, but it also really speaks to the fact that there isn't a single player you can really point to on Nashville and say, I'm sure they're going to have 20 goals this season. Or a player from last season, at least. And one forward isn't going to give them the scoring depth to compete with the Blackhawks and Blues for the division, let alone, or not let alone, but I actually don't think I would be shocked if they made the playoffs. So I'm not too worried about them. Dallas, again, I still think that they have a few years to, get everyone on the same page, get everyone kind of integrated into their system. Nichushkin, he's going to be a really good piece moving forward, but he still has to develop a little bit. Ben and Sagan, that combination is, really good, but I think they'll become even more effective as they get a little bit more time playing with each other too. So I do expect them to have a big jump this year, but again, I don't see Dallas competing with the Blues or the Blackhawks for the division just because the Blackhawks and the Blues have so much more depth at defense, so much more depth in scoring. And again, going back to the Avalanche, I just think that they overperformed. They have a lot of young guys that are only getting better, like Ryan O'Reilly and Landeskog and Duchesne. The list goes on and on. But until I'm still not sold that Varlamov can produce those same numbers, and that was so much of what got the Avalanche to where they are. And also, the defense isn't quite as deep as the Blackhawks or Blues. They don't have the not that it's bad, but Shattenkirk and Pietrangelo for the Blues, and they just and also all the forwards that are good two-way players like Backus and Schwartz, and then Blackhawks. I've kind of gone over all that already, but I'm not too worried about the Avalanche. It's mostly the Blues that I'm concerned about. And again, I have complete confidence that we'll make the playoffs. I don't want to say I have confidence that we'll take the division, but I'm optimistic and definitely think we have a shot.
Alrighty. Now we have only about 10 minutes or so for you left, I believe. Now's when we will get to our miscellaneous questions to conclude this team overview. The first question, who would you feel would be the Blackhawks' top goals and points getter for the upcoming season?
That's a good question. Points, I'll say it's going to be Taves. Goals, I think a lot of it is whether or not people can stay healthy. I think that Kane's probably going to be a popular answer there, just because of how talented he is. But I think that he's kind of plateaued. I don't know if I would say Kane definitely. I think with Richards playing with Kane, I think that it's probably going to be Kane. Now that I think about it, with probably Hossa second and then Taves third in goals.
Alrighty. Next, who do you feel would be the team's top overall player? And this can be in terms of both stats as well as the intangibles. And this can be just anyone on the roster.
Well, I'm going to have to give it kind of a tie. I know that's kind of a cop-out, but I can't not give it to either of these players. First, I'll go with Taves. He's a great captain. Again, as I said, I think that he's going to lead the team in points. He's great in the offensive zone and the defensive zone. Good face-off winner, good leader. And the other person I would give it to is Hossa, because, again, he provides so much offense. He's back-checking every single opportunity. He's, going for takeaways every single opportunity. He's, controlling the puck along the boards, winning board battles, just making smart plays. And he's an absolute workhorse, giving 110%. That I think rubs off on everyone else and forces and pushes everyone else to another level when they see someone putting that much blood, sweat, and tears on the ice. So I'm going to go with Taves and Hossa as kind of a tie there.
Alrighty. And lastly, Dave's favorite question here. Let us say that everything that can go wrong does go wrong, and the fan base and the media, they're looking for a scapegoat. Who would be that scapegoat? Who would be the public enemy number one in their eyes?
Ooh. That's tough. So, would everything include injuries?
Sure, we can. Yeah,
okay.
That would work.
Because I don't know if there would be a scapegoat, just because I think the Blackhawks fans have kind of put Stan Bowman on this pedestal of, if he does something, it was the right thing. I think but after the Crawford contract and the Versteeg trade, I think Bowman might get some of the criticism. It's hard to have a scapegoats on a team when everyone's kind of completely idolized. Being a Chicago fan, I'd liken it to the Bulls in the 90s. If the Bulls completely fell apart in the 97 season, nobody would be blaming Jordan out of principle. Nobody would be blaming Phil Jackson. Nobody would have been blaming, Pippen. It's just, I guess, because you could say, well, Hossa's given us so much in his underperformance. He's getting old. It was inevitable. And you could say the same thing about Taves and Kane. The only person I could think that would be an okay scapegoat for the Chicago fan base is Corey Crawford, just because he's had so many detractors before. So Yeah, I'd say Bowman maybe, Crawford maybe, but outside of that, I think everyone's just going to, just go into a general panic.
Alrighty. Concludes the team overview of the Chicago Blackhawks. Thank you, Ben, for joining us this evening. And I did forget to mention everyone's social media information. So before we find Ben on Twitter, his username is @DancingOnHighway, HWY. And you can find him on Reddit. His username, I believe it's still Fluttershy91.
It's Condor 90. It's Condor Avenue.
Okay. Oh, yes, that's right. Okay, I
Yeah.
remember now. Okay. Yes, you can find him on Reddit. His username is Condor Avenue. Alrighty, Ben. Thank you once again for joining us this evening.
And thanks for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. Alrighty, and now I will pass over the interview torch to my partner in crime, Dave, as we now head into the team overview of the Montreal Canadiens with the lovely Amanda. Take it away, Dave.
Thank you, Blake. And now as we start, how you doing, Amanda?
Good?
Doing good. You ready for this?
Yeah?
Got all your notes ready?
Yeah.
All right, so just the first thing we kind of want to do is kind of give us an overview of how your season went and also how your postseason went.
Right, so the regular season, like everything else with the Habs, has its ups and downs. There were plenty of times where you're like, what's going on here? Is this really the same team? Because I think it was early 2014, you looked at where they were back in November to where they were at that point, and it was like, what's going on? Like, nothing should have changed like this. And then all of a sudden, you'd have these streaks of awesomeness. And of course, it ended up working out, got into the playoffs. Pacioretty had 40 goals, PK had an awesome season, and so on. And of course, get to the playoffs, first team's Tampa. I know a lot of people didn't think that we would beat Tampa. Kind of went the exact opposite of that. So we swept them, and then it was Boston, which was so much fun to watch. It was really good to see, the speed, everything just making them so angry. And then the Rangers, where everything went downhill. But it was a good season. I've only been watching them for a couple of seasons, and that's the best they've done.
Okay. Would you say the high you guys had from the Boston series and all the energy you put into it kind of made it difficult for you guys to face the Rangers?
Yeah, probably. And then they're quick too. There was no real effort ever made to sort of work to counter that instead of just trying to be quick back. And especially, I can't remember which game it was. I just remember it was on my graduation day, and I was so mad at them. But it was just like, this whole teamwork thing went out the window. And then, of course, Price getting hurt did not help.
Yeah. Starting goalies going down never got hurt. But you did have a goalie that can come in and help out. He didn't do as bad as many people thought he would have done.
Yeah, Tokarski. Yeah, he was playing a preseason game the other night, and it's like he's still great. And he played against the Ducks back in the regular season, and we won that game.
Okay. So now we're kind of going to go in a little bit in depth about your team for this past season. So why don't you kind of go over your forwards core and kind of talk about how they each did this season, and then at the end give the forward core as a whole a grade.
Okay, so there are never really, or at least this season, there haven't really been lines. When I was listening to Ben, I'm like, oh, that's nice. You have a real first line. And it would always be, it was for the most part, Desharnais and Pacioretty on that first line, and it would sort of switch out who it was. Like, beginning of the season, Gallagher was with them, Vanek was with them later, which was awesome. You have, once Desharnais got into, I don't know what exactly it was that he was doing wrong, and the mayor of Montreal was like, I'm gonna get him a one-way bus ticket to Hamilton. It was just like so unnecessary.
That actually happens?
No, it was just because of, for whatever reason, that Desharnais wasn't producing, and
Mm.
I think he's decent, and I'm apparently one of the few people who think that. And so, let's see. Then you have the candidates usually on a second line. It's definitely one of the better guys too. Gianta, Eller. Then you got Briere, which
Hmm.
is kind of, eh. Everyone's saying, "Oh, you have to wait for him in the playoffs," and it's like, what if you don't make the playoffs?
Yeah, that's always a
Then you
problem.
had regular season Bork, but playoff Bork was super awesome. Proust has his moments. Getting Weiss from Vancouver, that was great. I forget how many. I think he had 3 goals, but I think he scored the overtime one in the first playoff game with Tampa. That was
Hmm.
awesome. But some of them, like Alchenia, still need a bit of time. Like, you can tell that he's still sort of a little uncomfortable with everything. But I think, to give them a grade B plus, once you can find chemistry and more than just that first line, but even then you would switch it up.
Hmm. Okay. So, did you gave him a B plus? So
Yeah.
now going into
An
your
A minus.
what was that?
Almost an A minus.
Almost name of mine. So kind of do the same thing, but with the defenseman.
So defense, there's where it was like, you've got PK and Markov, and picking up Mike Weaver was really good, but then you had Douglas Murray. Bullion, for some reason, still around. I don't understand. Emlyn has his moments, and that's the one thing where if there's any position that we need to work on, it's defensemen. Can't rely on PK and Markov for everything.
Hmm.
And thankfully got rid of Murray, but Bullion's still around, and got rid of Georges, who I think that was one of the things where it was like, why? So hopefully, I think one or two of the guys, I think Bullion and Tenorti are sort of the ones that might step up now, but that's what we need. We have all these younger guys, and for some reason we keep getting these older ones, and in like Murray's case, that was silly, and then he kept getting doing stupid things like he when he knocked over Casca back in April. And so you have a C plus there.
What'd he do?
It was out of nowhere. It was a game against the Lightning, one of the last regular season games, and he just hits him right in the head. And I think they only suspended him like 3 or 4 games, and then he came back and did something similar where it was just like, where did this come from? Why are you doing this? And it was just so unnecessary.
Okay. So, what grade you end up giving the defenseman
C
overall?
plus.
C plus. Okay. So now kind of do the same thing, but with goaltenders. So
Well,
I know you had you Carey Price you had this year.
yeah,
Uh,
Budai, and then Tokarski played 3 regular season games. And so Carey, of course, can't
mhm.
go wrong with him. There's a reason he's in the Olympics. Of course, a a lot of times the team was relying too much on him, and so there were points, where he can't stop everything, even though you'd like to believe that. And of course, Budai is decent, and it was always kind of awesome when he'd go in against the Bruins and we'd win. And then, like I said, Tokarski played a game against the Ducks, and we actually won it, and that was impressive. And then he didn't do horribly against the Rangers either. I think he played in 5 of those 6 games, and Budai only played in 1 from what I remember, and that was not going well. And so I guess with them go with an A really can't
Okay.
get much better.
Yeah,
Or
you can't
could,
really.
but
Yeah, Carey Price is one of the better goaltenders in the league right now, as evidenced by him being, the Olympic starter and all that. And him kind of going down definitely did kind of break your team for the playoffs.
mhm.
I mean, you guys got a good, try out of Tokarski, but he was still a rookie. He still could be beat. So he did as best as he could. And now, kind of tell us about your coaching, how they did this season, then also give them a grade.
I feel like if Tyrion could not always go with the whole dump and chase thing. It was kind of funny when you could just tell that Vanek would be like, nah, I'm not doing that today. But then he always does these questionable things where you're like, what is this guy thinking? And you hope maybe it's going to work, and it never really does. But he's always messing with blinds. Like, I forget who, well, I think it was the Pacioretty, Darnay, and Vanek line during the Bruins series wasn't working, and that was never tried again. Like against the Rangers, never really a line again. But he didn't switch it up right away, and it was just like there are things where it should have been quicker that something was done, and it was just sort of left. Or people will actually be working, and then all of a sudden that's changed. And just it needs some work on the power play. I've noticed that hasn't changed in the preseason games going on right now either. It's still an embarrassing thing to watch. And because he's who he is, it's always, you lose a few games, he needs to be fired. But I wouldn't go that far. I guess for a letter grade, go with a B minus.
Okay. So that wraps up our past season portion of this interview. So now we're going to head into the off season. And can you tell us about kind of who you drafted during the draft in Philadelphia this year, and how you kind of if you looked at him, how do you feel about you guys drafting him over other people?
Um, do like Sherbak. He is a lot like Galchenyuk. I think the preseason game on Thursday he was playing, so I got to see him. But today they sent him back to his junior team, and that's a good thing. I saw some idiot reporter saying that the coaches were disappointed in him, which is such a joke. He just clearly needs a bit more time before he's playing in the NHL. But the other ones, I look at their names again, and I think, they were here for training camp and then sent back. And, well, one of them has a really awesome name. His name is Hayden Hockey, and he's a goalie.
Wow.
So that would be interesting. But, there are 2. The whole joke is that the 5th round is Trevor Timmins' bonus round because that's where Gallagher was drafted. So there's 2 guys who were drafted then. So see where that ends up. But it's too early to say anything about anyone else there. It'll have to be a few years.
Yeah, that's kind of how drafting works. You don't usually see the fruits of your labor until 3 or 4 years down the road. So. You guys made a really, as I kind of see, as a pretty big move during the offseason in which you traded Danny Briere for a PA Parento and a 2015 fifth round. And you also traded Josh Gorges for a 2016 second round. I probably just butchered that last name. So, how do you think these moves help your team, and why do you think you actually made them?
Well, like Briere, there were times when he'd be a healthy scratch,
Hmm.
and it just I don't know what just I wasn't really that impressed by him, but everyone goes in with the like I said, the whole playoff Briere thing.
It's a
But
sight
then
to be seen, let me tell you. It's a sight
really,
to be seen.
we had playoff Blawkh instead. That's what we were given.
Hmm.
And so, like I said, fifth round pick, see where that goes. But I think they've had PA playing with Pacioretty and Darnay, and that could be interesting. So seems like a win so far. And then, like I said, George's that's a tough one to lose because, like I said, there's so many others of these older defensemen that we have that are questionable, and like to go from George's to Tom Gilbert is like apparently the replacement there.
Hmm.
I don't get it, but I'm not in charge, so George's was the one who had to go. But I did thoroughly enjoy that he turned down being traded to the Leafs as one last great Canadians move.
uh, so you guys kind of had a big battle with PK Subban this year, in which trying to get him signed under contract. So kind of tell us about if you kind of looked into it about what happened with the arbitration and how he was signed before the arbiter made a decision. So kind of tell us about what went down and what the contract ended up being like.
So like he was it a year or two ago, whatever, with the lockout, or was
Hmm.
it before? Whatever it was, ended up just being a short contract, just 2 years, and he ends up winning the Norris. So of course now you have to actually pay him. So again, it comes to this, and he's now proven himself many times over. So kind of gets to the point where you need to pay up. And I try to ignore the whole thing because, when you see everyone's in that the sky is falling, PK is leaving, and instead we get he has a contract. Is it 8 years? I'm trying to remember the amount.
Yeah. He has it at 8 years, and where is he? Where's his name? 8 years at $9 million a year. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm sure if I mean he deserves to get paid, but I don't.
He definitely deserves to get paid.
Yeah, but that's a lot. But you know what? It keeps him around, and he wants to play for this team, which is why it was really irritating when people were saying, "Oh, now he's gonna leave." He's not going to leave.
Yeah.
He like it's just the one where you're like, PK, you can't see him on another team.
Yeah. It's difficult to see him on another team. I mean, the guy's only 25. He is very young still, and even at what his contract ends when he's going to be what 33,
32,
32,
33.
33. So he will still be pretty good at that point. And so it would just kind of be heading into okay, he's trying to taper off a portion of his contract when his $9 million contract ends.
Yeah, and I'd rather him being paid more now than, having it be some other short-term contract that ends in 2 or 3 years when he's
Mhm.
at his prime.
Yeah. A lot of people, kind of the only thing I've really heard from about this was people were saying you should have signed him 2 years ago when he had his first arbiter kind of decision.
Hmm.
You should have just given him money. Probably should have just paid him then, because now you're gonna have to pay him more money.
Yeah,
That's the
us
thing.
all like one of those
Bef-
hindsight's 2020 things though.
Because that was
Like,
before he got the Norris Trophy.
yeah,
So okay. And now, you lost some pretty good players from your team this year, and I guess Brian Gianto was good. He was your captain, I believe.
Yeah.
Then you also lost Thomas Vanek, who I don't think really fit for your team. And then you lost Ryan White, also I think was a fourth liner for you
Yes.
guys. So how do you think losing these three people kind of affects your team?
Well, I liked Vanek, and I'm still of the opinion that at one point during the Boston series, PK accidentally ran into him, and I still think he was playing hurt after that. But
Mm-hmm.
all these people would claim, oh, he's not trying, and all this stuff. I like him. I liked him before he was on the Canadiens, he's one of my favorite non-Canadiens players, but, you know, wasn't going to work, and there are too many people we already have or could get who deserve to be paid, and that one was it was a interesting thing. Like, you know, when it happened, I was like, really? And Gianta, I was kind of hoping he'd be going to another team. Like, there were times when he did something good, but it was just mostly he's there. And there's nothing that really stands out. Like, he was captain, but it was just like, why? There was nothing that you ever felt like you'd see other people like Georges, PK, Pecanitz, that just made so much more sense, but it was him. And Ryan White, you know, you have enough players around the same level as him, and he was goofy. There's some hilarious gifs out there of him, but you know, that happens. You just have too many people, so someone has to go.
Mm-hmm. All right. Where was I? It was up here. So you guys named 4 assistant captains, 2 full-time and 2 to be rotated. So kind of tell us who the assistant captains and all the 4 assistant captains are, and why don't you think you named a full-time captain?
So they're Pacioretty, Pecanitz, Markov, and Subban. Uh, I don't think that just from free agency to the season is enough time to be picking a captain, and the 4 of them are good. I just like maybe next season there will be one, but I don't think it would be Markov because then you'd just be doing this again in a few years. I would think you'd want someone more long term, so like PK, Patches, they're the ones who really would make sense to me. But, you know, it's just sort of like a tryout season, see who stands out best. They've all been assistant captains before, like when Gianto was out, I think Pacioretty was like the away extra one, and
Mm-hmm.
then I think that must switch them around a bit, but yeah, it's like the first full time of Pacioretty having the A.
Okay. And I know this is like the second time I think in Canadians history that you don't have a captain.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna be kind of a different feel for your team, I guess, in that aspect.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure it's not because of Gianta, but it seems like just need a bigger period of time to pick someone instead of just here you go. Because who knows how many of those, I haven't looked at it, but how many of those guys might be like a season or two and they're probably looking for something more long term.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and even though training camp just started, do you see your team making any more new moves to either, shore up your forward group, shore up a defenseman? Do you
I
see
would
anything happening?
I would like something different on defense, but I'm sure it's just going to be paring down from the Bulldogs now. But we still have like because of how many games Tokarski's played, he would have to clear waivers to be sent back down.
Mm,
So it'll be kind of interesting to see what happens with that. Like if they'll do that with Budai instead and not risk losing Tokarski to some team with goalie problems, off Minnesota. But it just seems like it would be the better risk to try it with the older goalie and keep the younger one. But at the same time, it would suck for Budai to not actually be with the Canadians. So that'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Okay. So that kind of wraps up our off-season portion of this interview. Now heading into the next season, how do you feel about this season coming up?
I'm really excited. I thought the whole off season I've been very into soccer, and I thought, oh, what's this gonna do about hockey? But after watching two preseason games, I'm ready for it, and I know it's just the preseason, but they look really good.
What has you most excited about your team?
Yuji Sakach,
Hmm.
he's awesome. I am all aboard the Sakach hype train. It was on Monday or one of those 2 days, Monday or Tuesday, they were playing. It was Tuesday because I remember I didn't have internet yet still, and he scored a goal, and I just kept watching the video clip over and over, and then my cell phone gives me you have used 90% of your data for the month. And I was like, you can't stop.
Okay. What do you think your lineup's going to look like? How are all your pieces going to fall into a line? How
I
to set up?
think are there there's either one or two open forward spots because I guess it seems Borneval is going to stay, and then there's Malhotra, Moen, if he's not injured again. So I think Sakash is going to get that spot. I know they're still playing Christian Thomas and forgot the other person. Oh, I think it was has to still be Sven Andrew Ghetto. He's awesome too. So it's like I want all three of them, but we really can only probably have one, and it would probably end up being Sakaj. And then defenseman wise, I think, like I said, Blue and Tenorti seem like they're going to be the two.
Okay.
And then goalies have no idea what they're going to do that route. Like I could go either way. Who would be the backup, and it would be sad and happy either way.
Mm. Okay. So, so you think you're going to be buyers of the? Or, sorry, I skipped a question. Do you think you're going to make the playoffs this year?
Probably. I would think
Probably. That's not a definite yes or no. We want a definite yes or no.
yes. I
Yes.
think we've so far, as long as I think most of the moves have been upgrades.
Hmm.
So I think it could happen.
Okay. And so you think you're going to be buyers at the deadline if
Probably.
you
I
do
see
get
it more
something.
as if we're in the position to be in the playoffs, might bolster things up a bit.
What do you think you're going to try to go for at the deadline if you do try to bolster things up a bit?
Depends on how it's going. Like if the offense it is now is scoring a lot of goals, I don't see that being a change. Where I
Hmm.
can see defense slightly being a problem, depending on how that's going. But I'm not even sure like where exactly. I don't know what what the plan is with the pairings just yet. But I mean, I think that could be a possibility.
Okay. So, kind of now the fun questions to really ask. Who's going to score the most goals on your team?
Pacioretty,
Okay.
just bias, my favorite. But I mean, he got 40 last time. Who's to say he can't do that again?
Yeah,
Especially if the whole PA Parento and Darnay with him
kind of works
work
out.
all. Yeah,
Okay. And who do you think is going to score the most points?
I would say Pacioretty, but he's not. He doesn't assist as much, and I can see someone else like maybe Galchenyuk or Gallagher having both goals and assists combined being higher up than Pacioretty, or even PK.
Hmm. Okay. And who is going to be your best overall player?
Pacioretty.
Ready? I feel like you're a little biased.
Okay, PK.
Okay. And now my favorite question to ask. Say everything that can go wrong just does go wrong, and your team just goes to shit. Who is going to be the scapegoat, and who's going to be thrown under the bus?
It's whoever's the person from the area to blame. So if it seems more coaching is gonna be the coach, or it'll be Desharnais. Or who else did I, oh, I guess now we can blame Parento if you'd like. But I think, more than likely it ends up being, depending on which thing is suffering, it's either Tyrion overall. Desharnais is always the one for forwards. Sometimes Bork. I've already seen the almost Bork hashtag being used. And then probably Yemelin usually gets it for the defenseman.
It's nice that your team kind of focuses on one spot instead of just going after a player.
Yeah, you can
Your fan
choose
base.
different players depending on what's happening. Not scoring goals, it was Vanek then.
Okay.
Everything's going wrong, Tyrion.
Okay. And that's everything I have for you, unless Blake has a question he wants to ask. I don't know if he's by his phone right now. Guess not. So I would like to thank you for coming in and talking to us, Amanda. Oh, there's Blake.
Oh, there it is. Look.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Blake, did you have a question you wanted to ask before I kind of do the outro portion?
Oh no, that's all I have there.
Okay. So, as I was saying, I'd like to thank you for having us join us, and I would like to thank Ben, even though he's not here, for joining us. And I would like to thank all you guys for listening to us. Next week, we're going to be covering the two Stanley Cup finalists, the Rangers and the Kings. So tune into that. We're not sure exactly what time we're going to be doing that at yet. And you can listen to this show and all of our other shows, our HockeyCast shows, on our website, rhockeycast.com. You can go to our subreddit, which is r/rhockeycast, or you can go to our YouTube page, which is HockeyCast. On Monday, we'll be having the Pucking Awesome podcast at 9:30. Okay. Blake, I'm going to have to mute you. We'll be having the Pucking Awesome podcast at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. The Our Hockey After Hours show should be on 11:30 p.m. EST, also on Monday. Tyler Tuesdays will be back with a new name on Wednesday at 7:30 Eastern. You can follow Our HockeyCast on Twitter at @OurHockeyCast to get updates about all of our shows and anything else we put out. And you can follow me on Twitter at @Blinson1 or on Reddit at userblinson. You can follow Blake at @ShatMyKirk on Twitter or user BTownBomb. You can follow Amanda on Twitter at Fabuloshi or on Reddit at Saturday Night Riot. Ben on Twitter is Dancing on Highway, and on Reddit he is Condor Avenue, as I said earlier. So again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us and thank everyone for listening, and have a good night, everybody.